less I use all my gear, the more empowered people will feel. So, I busted out the battery drill, or the corded drill, because most people have access to one. More and more people have battery drills these days, which are also great. The high RPMs are good for pre-drilling, but they're by no means essential. In something like this, you get such a soft wood and such a small distance to go through with a screw. Like, this is actually way too big for the countersink. This is the kind of countersink that I really like. They're made by a company called Fuller originally, which is from Rhode Island. It's tapered because wood screws are actually tapered, drywall screws aren't. Drywall screws are good for holding pieces of drywall to 2x4s. They're not good for attaching wood to itself, even though people do it all the time. They're brittle, they can break, they rust. You know, if you store these in your basement, your drywall screws are going to get rusty and weird, you know, if it's damp in your basement. So, you know, I like using deck screws because, you know, for something like this, they're really available. You can get them at any Home Depot or anything like that. I think up at Leader, they probably have some good ones.
Deck screws.
Yeah, so I mean, these are the ones that Home Depot has off the rack, which I just got them because I was nearby and I stopped in. They have these stupid star drive heads, which are annoying, but they give you a driver tip for them, so, you know, it's not like you have to go out and buy something special to use them.
So are they brass?
What is a driver kit? Is that makes the hole bigger so you can sink the head?
No, it
Or
just
what?
means the driver tip is just, yeah, it's just what you, because it's not,
No, well, I'm just trying to get a,
I'll get on the other
so
side.
that people can see when we.
this has this, like, overly complicated driver tip, you know, that seats into that. Because ostensibly that's
So
better.
normally you have a Phillips head or a straight, this one's
Yeah,
another head.
right. If I had 3 wishes, one of them would be for every screw on the planet to have a square drive head.
Really?
Square is good, it never strips out, you know, and I get, when you're working with different kinds of screws and you're constantly switching driver tips, it's like, it's enough to drive you bananas.
I've never seen this one before.
Yeah, it's some,
That's why they
Who
give you,
knows
that's
why.
why they give you the thing to go in.
yes, yeah.
Don't drop it down a hole.
So,
What is the description of the countersink as far as dimensions? Is the floor?
I think you just want a number 8 is the thing to look for.
Okay.
I know that they have a DeWalt made version of this, which DeWalt is a company that makes all kinds of junk that they sell at Leader and Home Depot. Home Depot, last time I checked, only sold these in 3-packs, which makes them absurdly expensive. It's like $25 for 3 of these. You should be able to get them singly. I don't know. I assume that Leader has them. There are other kinds of countersinks that are principally the same. They may not be tapered. It's not absolutely essential for this that it be tapered. They look more or less the same. They're not quite as, you know, spirally and everything. They look like they have just a normal drill bit with a thing here that just allows a recess for the head.
But they need to be that long.
They need to be this long if you're driving long screws, like what I'm about to do if we get to this point. You know, the nice thing about this is it's adjustable, so you can shorten it for a shorter screw, which we're going to use for this.
So, you're going to use a different screw for those ones?
Yeah, these are way overkill to like drive this all the way into there just to do that. It seems kind of crazy. So I'm going to switch over to something shorter. I mean, there's a lot of minutia, and I hesitate to get too into it because I don't want to kill people with excess information. When you're driving wood screws, it's a good idea to countersink all the time. You're sort of allowing the space for the wood. You're allowing the threads to just cut the amount that they're intended to without having to like shove all this wood fiber out of the way, which is what's going to cause a split. You may not do it every time, but it's sort of, it's inviting that possibility.
So when you say countersink,
Yes.
what exactly do you mean?
Countersinking means, see those little
Drilling it first?
edges?
No. Uh-huh.
It just means that this head has somewhere to go once it hits the edge. You're carving out a little hollow so that the head can sit flush with the surface. So.
I've known the word, I've had an idea, but
Yeah, now you know.
now I know for sure.
And is that an Allen wrench?
Yeah, I like to keep one of these in my pocket because you always end up needing one. If you have an Allen wrench kit, you probably got a size that will be compatible with something like this. A lot of the countersinks come with these, if it needs one to adjust it, it'll come with one in the little package,
Do some of them have it on the drill?
Different. This is a keyless chuck, but if you have a drill where the chuck is tightened up mechanically, then they have a separate item for that. So this, here's the length of the screw. I'm setting the countersink to the length that we're going to use. That's pretty straightforward.
But you would use these screws for this?
Yeah, because it's going through something that's so much wider, It's going to go through 1.5 inches before it hits the other surface, So you still want enough thread that it's going to draw those two pieces together. So
What length is that?
I think these are 2.5. Yeah, 2.5 inch screws. Because we're using 1.5 inch parts, and therefore you need that extra inch to go into.
1.5?
These, I think, these are 1.5 inches. Yeah.
So how would you determine that? You're looking, this is what, an inch or 3/4
Yeah,
inch?
there's no hard and fast rule. I just think, okay, that's going to have a decent amount of grab without worrying about, is it, if you're not drilling perfectly straight, it's going to blow through the side, That's really kind of all there is to it. For
So you're not
something
necessarily
like this.
doubling it. You need about 1/2 inch of a grab?
Well, I
generally?
felt like for these small pieces, you're only going to get away with so much end grain screw threading, So another thing I would do is if I put the thing together and it feels weak, then I'll step it up to a bigger one, which is easy for me to say because I keep a supply of screws on hand.
Right.
But
Right.
but that's my gut is to use that one, and then we'll see how it feels. To my mind, this is pretty undersized for this project, but it might be totally fine to get somebody through a couple seasons,
Right.
and so there's nothing wrong with that.
Couple of seasons, what's gonna happen to it? It's gonna sit in one place for 5 months and then it's...
Well, the other thing is that wood does move seasonally, and with the expansion and contraction of the wood, especially with the end grain, it's sort of moving this way, which means that it's over time going to loosen the heads or the hold of the screw threads. So, that's a little bit of woodworker minutia, and sometimes I have trouble teasing out my professional opinion from what's practical and necessary.
Well, I mean, that's an important part of learning, a reason to get wider wood. I mean, I could have had him just rip it in half instead of rip it into 4 strips.
Well, I think again, I think this is probably going to serve you fine for
And this
for some
concerns
time.
me, what you're about to do. Like how to hold this steady so that when you drill through, you get a straight.
What would be easier for most people than using this would be, because this is kind of heavy, battery drills have gotten lighter and lighter over the years, and they're more ubiquitous now. I've sort of been on a campaign for years to get people who own homes to have their own battery drills because they're just so useful. This is a pretty lightweight one, which I like to use a lot. It's just so flexible. If you were...
I've never seen a bit that's tapered, ever, in all my years.
I hadn't seen one until I started working full-time as a carpenter, and then it was like a revelation. It's like, wow, the screws are really easy to drive now. So I'm used to doing this, and I can just kind of locate the center by eye. I'm also good with sort of feeling, what is basically parallel. I don't know if I have a whole lot of tips for that, other than, just sort of trying to sight it before you get rolling.
Practice.
And take it slowly.
Then why did you glue it first? Just to give it a little bit
Because
extra strength and know that it's going to stay where you...
wood glue in end grain does very, very little. So, I mean...
End grain being...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It wouldn't really grab. Even if you tried to clamp this and walked away from it for half an hour, you could just go like that probably.
Oh, really?
Or maybe you'd use a little more leverage.
So the first piece of wood that you go through, you want that big enough so the screw can pass, doesn't need to grab anything until it gets to the second piece of wood.
Well, what you're doing is, you're piloting out the middle body of the screw. The threads are a little wider than the actual shank of it. So what you're doing is you're allowing the body to go through, and then the threads are just cutting enough for themselves, you know. So it's not that you want this to slide in loose. You don't. You actually want it to have a little bit of bite. But you just want to allow clearance so that you're not forcing those fibers and slicing those fibers out of the way, which is then what's going to cause, especially close to the end, it's going to cause the wood to split. So